All right. Well, without further ado, then, let's turn the floor over to Evan Kantor, who teaches at Bronx Leadership Academy 2 High School.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Evan Kantor. I teach at a Title I public school in the Bronx. I teach algebra, I teach geometry, I teach pre-calc, I teach PGC. Originally, I taught geometry and pre-calc, and they sort of asked me to teach an additional class that I don't know what it's called when they add it on. I call it the jackpot class because they pay me a little bit more for it, so I love it. And so I started, this is my first year teaching algebra, and of course it's the year that we are thrown for a loop with this distance learning thing. So first, I think I could give a longer than 8-minute talk on what's not working well and what's not going well. We're definitely all struggling, I think, but I suppose we'll look at the positives, and there definitely are some positives that have come from this, so that's what I will share with you. So when they announced that we were going to start distance learning, my reaction was probably the same as everybody's, like, oh, this is going to be terrible. How are we going to do this? How are we going to reenact the classroom, that personal touch? Like, we're going to lose all this stuff. And, you know, there's definitely so much that we're losing. But then I also thought, okay, there's got to be something that can be better about this. There's got to be something that, there's got to be some positives that can come from this. There's so many flaws in the classroom environment, the classical one right now that I'm teaching in. There's got to be some benefits to not being in this classroom environment. So I thought, what positives can come from this? And the biggest one I sort of settled on, which was what I was going to focus the most, is that I won't really be there to support them the way that they usually need it. So maybe they'll be able to develop the skill where they're completely independent and they have to do all the heavy lifting. And it's a skill that we already work on in the classroom, because I think it's one of the most important skills that high school students can start to develop, especially if they're preparing for college, where they have to do so much of the learning on their own and figuring stuff out on their own. So it's something that I try in the classroom, but it's not that easy to do in the classroom, to tell kids, no, I won't help you because I'm there. And, you know, when I say use your resources or something like that, it's so easy for them to just quit or get distracted by a friend or something like that. So I thought this distance learning is a great opportunity to make them do the heavy lifting without having me there, really. So I figured that the best way to do that would be like a flipped classroom, where I give them the material and they try to learn it on their own, and then we talk about it together the next day. And that's what I settled on as like my main technique. And I don't do a typical flipped classroom, but what I essentially do is so let's say I'm trying to teach them how to factor a trinomial. We'll have our Google Hangout meeting, which is only 30 minutes long. So by the time they all get there, I have them for about 25 minutes. And I'll basically say, okay, today you guys are going to learn how to factor a trinomial. Here's why it's important, and you're on your own. And it's so new to them, or at least it used to be new, because it used to be, okay, here's the procedure. Here's, you know, some common misconceptions. We'd have to get into all the details. And now I'm basically saying, okay, here's where you can find resources to figure out how to do it. So my Google Classroom, if you go into the classworks, it's like basically like a calendar. It says the date, Monday, May 11th. And they click into that and they can find a bunch of resources that'll help them solve whatever, you know, practice I assign. So it's a lot of the times it's a Delta Math or a Google form or a Desmos activity. And basically they see what they have to accomplish by hopefully the end of class. And then they know where they can find the resources to figure it out on their own. It's a Khan Academy video or an Ed Puzzle video, sometimes a YouTube, sometimes like a PDF. But I just give them the resources, and then I say, okay, it's on you. You got to figure it out, and hopefully you get it by the end of the class. And at first they were like, what, are you kidding me? Like, no, we need you to explain it. You need to be there. So I like the way that you teach. I don't like this Kahn guy. Who is this guy? I don't know him. And but then once they got used to it, they started figuring it out, and they started learning how to teach themselves the material. And I think that when they teach it themselves and they don't have me giving them the procedure and an exemplar that they then can model, like, that works, but it doesn't really stick with them. Not a lot of my students are studying or doing a lot of work outside the classroom in general. So I'm always trying to find ways to teach something that'll stick in their brains a little bit better. And it's always, if they figure it out on their own, it always sticks with them better. So by doing this, by basically forcing them to, I find that a lot of them are learning the material even better than they would if I gave them everything and if I walked them through it step by step and held their hands. And it's working well for a lot of the kids, and it also is, of course, not working well for some of the kids as well. The much lower kids, they struggle with this. I can't teach myself this. I'm not at a ninth grade level. Some of them are at a fourth, fifth grade math level. So how do you adapt this to those kids? So that was my first big challenge. And basically how I've adapted to that is, what would happen is the kids would do the standard, I get an email, Mr. I need help. And then I would say, okay, can you be more specific? Because what do you need help in? And then they'd say, yeah, I don't understand. I'd be like, okay, thanks for getting really specific there, student X. That's really helpful. But then, so I wouldn't help them with that. I don't understand. I need help. I'd say, what do you need help with? They'd say, I don't get it. And I'd say, well, I can't really help you with that. I'm not there with you. I can't sit next to you, walk you through it. Basically, they want me to reteach them the lesson privately, which I can do in the classroom. I do it all the time when, students aren't paying attention or something. But now I'm like, I can't do that. So what's happened is I've told them they have to get more specific with their questions. They have to, give us some sort of entrance that we can all help them with, me, the other classmates. And what's happened is those students that need extra help, that are struggling, they've really developed these great questioning techniques where now they have to tailor their question to be something specific, where we can actually, okay, you don't know what B is if you're trying to find the vertex. Okay, we can work with that. We can all help you with that. So these lower students are developing questioning techniques, and what's happening is they are, in order to make these questions specific and in order to ask these actual, questions that we can answer, they're watching the videos more in depth. They're putting much more effort into it. And a lot of them are realizing, oh, I don't actually need someone else's help. I just need to work a little bit harder. And they're rising. Their level is, they're improving because of this, now they're forced to watch the videos so that they can get the questions or, read the PDFs. So a lot of them realize they don't need the help, or they need much less help because they figured most of it out and they just have a specific question. So it's really great because the higher level students, they're on their own. The lower level students, they develop better questioning, and those other students can help them now. And everybody's helping each other. And I can just step back and it's sort of like everybody's sustaining without me. And it's made my life a lot better than when I have to hold everybody's hand, because they're learning on their own. They're figuring stuff out without me. They're learning it better. And the best thing that happened so far is I teach PGC, which is like a group of 18 seniors that teach freshmen. Basically, it's like very high seniors, and some of them are in my pre-calc class. One of the girls said to me one day in PGC, "Mister, this is terrible. What are you doing? You're not teaching us some of the stuff you did. This stuff was so hard yesterday. I didn't know what to do. I had to talk. I had to call up, my so-and-so, and we had to look at YouTubes together, and yeah, we figured it out. It took us an hour and a half." And I was like, you just made my day. I'm sorry you hate me, but that's exactly that's the whole point. So good for you. And I'm glad that it's working for a lot of them. And I'm seeing a lot of good learning and the skill developing that, I normally really struggle to get them to develop because I'm usually there to support them. And when they don't have me, turns out a lot of them don't need me. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we've got a few minutes. We can open the floor for questions. And as people are thinking of their questions, I'd love to know a little bit more about what those resources look like that you put up for the students.
So the best resource that they all love is I give them a lot of Delta Math work, and it's very procedural. It's not the most rigorous work, but it's good on teaching them those basic procedural skills, and it goes over the whole algebra curriculum. It's got a lot of good problems there, and our school purchased Delta Math Pro for us, and every type of problem, every topic has a video that has someone explaining them how to do that type of work. They could use that. They have Khan Academy. I always post a couple Khan Academy videos that he teaches them how to do the stuff. So they love being able to go into those videos and pause them and, okay, this part looks like this part of the problem I'm at. Do that part of the problem, go back to the video, and then and I think it's the videos that they like the most. Also, Delta Math has a show example feature, which they use to, try to use as like an exemplar to model their problems after.
Nice. Scott, you've got a question.
Coming from a private school, I'm just trying to wrap my brain around what you're actually working with. I was wondering, how large are your class sizes?
My class sizes go up to 34, and most of them are 34. This one's 33, I believe. Yeah, 33. Okay.
So if you have 25 minutes, you really have like less than a minute per child, even if you were going to try to work it.
Right, exactly. It's just not feasible. And, our school is really promoting also try to make it so they can do the work in 20 minutes, so that they could either you're teaching the whole time and you give a 20-minute assignment after. But what I've noticed is that if they don't get it done during the class time, some of them won't get it done at all. So try to make the assignment so that they can figure out how to do it and complete it within that 25-minute window. By the time that they get there and attendance is taken, it's really 25 minutes for 33 kids.
Cool. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions? Melissa.
How much talking do you let the students do? Because sometimes I let them discuss, but then sometimes when students talk, no one really understands what they're saying. So it's good for that one child, but I feel like the other students in the discussion are just zoning out, and I can't even really call them out because they're at home.
Yeah, the only time, like I said, what's not working, a discussion has, there's not nearly the same discussions that we were having in class now in the distance classroom. But so most of the students are muted the entire time. I don't hear them the entire class. I don't even see them. I don't even know what they're doing, but they eventually get the work done, so I know that they're working. But if a student is struggling, if they ask a specific question, and then I'll say, okay, great question. Who wants to tackle that question for, so-and-so? And then I'll ask for one student, unmute yourself and talk this person through this question and how you're doing it. And so that one person will say, what's working for them, their strategy. And then that person that asked the question will either say, great, I understand it, or they'll say, what are you talking about? And we'll say, maybe someone else can explain their strategy. Maybe that will be better. So really just one person talking at a time and typing in the chat as well. They all type in the chat. But yeah, only one person's ever talking. And it's usually, we hear from 2 or 3 students the whole class. That's it.
Thank you. And I apologize to those of you who have questions. I'd love it if we could come back to those later, because I'd like to turn the floor over to our second presenter. And our second presenter is Sharona Khan, and she teaches at the Berkeley Carroll School. Take it away, Sharona.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Evan, for sharing your experiences. I'm going to share my screen. And can you see this, everybody? Okay. So I was trying to think about how we can keep open-ended conversations going through Zoom and other online features, basically. I wanted to keep up community and discussion, and I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels very low energy and like I'm getting nothing, I'm just talking at a screen. So I wanted to make some opportunities for active involvement, and so I prepared some to share with you today that maybe you want to use in your own classrooms, things that have been working well. So the first tool I want to talk about is which one doesn't belong. And I made this presentation available in the shared folder, so all of these links are there for you as well. And I specifically went, this link guides you directly to the graphs category, because which one doesn't belong has a lot of different categories. So the point of which one doesn't belong is no one right answer, but the stronger the argument, the better. And so all of these give you 4 different similar pictures, and you need to say which of the 4 doesn't belong and why. And again, there's no one right answer. So I just put some sample responses that some of my students have written in the past few weeks or so. And this allows students to enter with kind of whatever level of vocab they're at. You can set some more parameters about, I've done that too, and I think I say that in a few slides, but you can set some parameters, like you can give a word bank, you can say you have to use a certain number of vocab words in each argument that you make. You can tell the students that they should try to write 3 different arguments for one set of which one doesn't belong. And then here's just another example, and these are parabolas again, but you can see some of those sample student answers that I really just copied and pasted into this from a recent activity. And here's another one we did. This was a different algebra class. These are 8th graders, by the way. I teach 8th grade. So again, these are for polynomial vocabulary. They did a good job with that. So like I said, these are some ways that you could vary the which one doesn't belong. And I'll share, I'm going to talk about algebra by example next, but then I'll share how I'm implementing this and what types of platforms work the best for creating these conversations. So the next tool is called Algebra by Example. And this is great for sort of a deductive reasoning and kind of figuring it out for yourself, like Evan was saying. So what it does is it gives a series of examples that are incorrect or correct. So they'll always say, this person didn't solve the equation correctly, here's what he did, with a follow-up question. And so I like to give these when I'm first introducing the topic. So this, you can see, would be solving using square roots. And I would do this kind of in the beginning so that they don't yet really have the knowledge and they're trying to figure out what might have been incorrect based on what they already know. And then, so for this one, here are some sample student responses that they wrote to me. And these do have right answers, but I think that they leave more room for the equation, give an answer, solve the equation, give an answer. They give more of an opportunity for students to explain their thinking, and then that clues me in a little bit where their misconceptions lie, and we can kind of draw out the understanding from where they're at. It also gives examples of things that are correct, and then asks you why. Why is it correct? And these get followed up with some you-try problems that look just like these, but in the same way Evan was explaining, they don't need me to teach them or explain them. They're taking these examples and trying to figure out why it's correct, why it's incorrect, and what can I take from this to apply to a similar scenario. And for that one, here were some sample explanations. And again, these are really interesting because they vary so much. Every student writes, even if they're saying the same answer, they're explaining using different words in their own words. Okay, so what I've been using to get these conversations going are several different ways. Some I've tried a lot, some I've tried a little, some I think could work, but I haven't actually tried them yet. The way we've been doing it at Berkeley Carroll is we have 2 synchronous classes on Zoom a week, and then the other 3 days are asynchronous, where the students are working on assignments independently. So the way I've been doing this is I just project the which one doesn't belong or the algebra by example, and we talk about it as a whole group, or I'll post it for them in Google Classroom, and they'll go into their breakout rooms and discuss it there with their breakout rooms. I've also used the Google Classroom question feature to include the photo, and then they can all reply to their questions in there, and they can also respond to one another in that platform, or I make a Google Doc, and through Google Classroom I can make a copy for each student, and they can type their answers in, and then I can write responses right back on their Google Doc, and we can get the conversation going. So I might like highlight a portion and say, what's a more specific way, what's a word for this? Like if a student writes something, it's the only one that doesn't have a line at 1, I'll highlight it and say, is there a vocab word that we could use that's more specific? And I'll assign it to the student, and they'll, through Google Docs, reply to me like, yes, axis of symmetry. So it creates a conversation with us going remotely. You can use a Padlet to post, and that way all of the students' responses become displayed. You could use GoFormative, which I think is the best thing ever. And if you haven't checked out Formative, we could do a whole workshop just on everything you can do with Formative. But that's also so easy to implement, because what I've been doing is through Formative, I just can upload the whole PDF from Algebra by Example and just click each question as a number, and then they type their responses in there. So it's very little work for me, like no screenshotting, no cropping, nothing like that. It goes straight in very easily. Flipgrid is really cool if you haven't tried that yet. This gives students an opportunity to make a video, and you can write, they can use a whiteboard, you can write a rubric to go with it, and you can make an option where students can see each other's videos and reply through videos as well. This individual whiteboard app is really cool. It gives each student just a place where they can write or type, and you can see everybody's at the same time in real time. So that could be cool too, to screen share in a Zoom. I've done this before, but I haven't shared the responses with everybody. I've just read them myself. And Poll Everywhere is pretty good. It has options for just in real time, that's my timer, for in real time seeing what students think, and you can make like a scale, you can make multiple choice, you can just make open-ended. So these are some platforms, and I'm out of time, but that's okay, because I actually prepared it just so that if there was more time, I would continue. But when you check out this presentation, then I go a little bit into Polygraph by Desmos, which is sort of different, but similar, and I'd recommend it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's, Danielle, it looks like you already have a question.
Yeah, this is really great. Thank you so much for sharing. And this was amazing. Is it possible to get the Google Slides shared if that's not a problem?
Yeah, definitely. Does everybody have that shared? There was a shared folder that went with this session, but I can also put my email address in the chat if that's helpful.
Yes, that would be great. That would be amazing.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just a reminder that with the evaluation for this session, you will be reminded about that, where that shared folder is. So Daniel, you'll be able to find that folder there. Excellent. Gabrielle, you have a question.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Sharona, for that. That was really excellent. I appreciate it. I'm just wondering about how you've been allotting the time. Where I teach, we are doing all synchronous classes. So I'm curious if this is something that you only do during the synchronous classes, during the asynchronous, if you've been alternating, and sort of how you've been structuring, I guess, even your own time in terms of responding to students. Is that something you're doing during class or after?
Sure, both. I've done it in asynchronous and synchronous. If I've done it in asynchronous time, they sort of have like a 24-hour rolling period to work on it. So I sort of wait a day and then respond in the next day. When it's a synchronous class, like I said, I'll either do it as a whole class conversation, or I'll have them do it in breakout groups. And something I'll do, and I'm going to do this again this week, is I'll put them in breakout groups, and the majority of the time might be for doing like which one, like number one of which one doesn't belong, and then a whole set of algebra by example, which is usually 4 examples of what I showed you, like 2 correct, 2 incorrect. And I'll have them write it to me on using formative, and then I can see it real time. So if you're using formative, you can see all the student responses as they're coming in, and you can even respond on the platform, like in a chat. So I can respond to a student and say, you know, those 2 arguments are too similar. Come up with a different argument, and they'll backspace and they'll do it right there in real time. So even if I'm in a different breakout room, listening and observing and helping, I can still be watching the other breakout rooms. And Google Docs will do that as well.
Thank you so much. And my apologies to Victoria, but we need to move on to our third presenter. So with that, I will turn the floor over to Scott Wickham, who teaches at the Buckley School.
Oh, hello, everyone. I'm about to share a link in the chat, just in case you did not have access to this doc before. So I hope everyone has that. I'm just going to adjust my screen size just a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Oops. All right. So what works? One of my keys, excuse me, I shouldn't actually just read what I wrote, but I'm putting it in. Before I talk about myself, I actually want to talk about something my administration did that has helped me be successful. And what they have done is they've actually modified the schedule. So what we have is we have an hour-long, we have 45-minute periods within an hour. So our students actually have 45 minutes in the class, and then they actually have a 15-minute break. I just believe that that is like really, really helpful for the students, because even I'm finding, you know, looking at this Zoom for, 40 minutes, my eyes are starting to hurt and I'm starting to get tired. And there is just a certain amount of exhaustion you have by staring at screens. So I think that that's just really important. And if your administration doesn't give that to you, I would actually try to break it into your classroom, where if you could basically give the kids something maybe at the beginning, they copy it into a document, they work on it, they can be offline for 10 minutes and then they come back and then you work on it together. I just think the nature of the technology has that. Now, let's see. Let's first talk about tools. At our school, we are actually a one-to-one Chromebook school, but the way our school works, the Chromebooks actually stay at school. And since we had a little bit of warning about this before the shutdown, we have our spring break at about the 15th of March. We actually had all the kids take home their Chromebooks. So I know that all of my kids have a Chromebook. I know that every kid has a smartphone, and I know everyone has pencil and paper. And so when I wanted to design how to do online, I used those constraints to figure it out. And then, of course, I actually don't have a touchscreen Chromebook. I only have a regular laptop. And so I have slightly different constraints. And so I've actually been in the educational technology area for a long time, so I've actually developed a philosophy. And my philosophy is pretty simple. I want to teach my subject, not how to use software. So any software that I use often, I will use class time to use it. But if I'm going to do that, then I expect to be using that tool all year long. So at the beginning of the year, we used alex.com, which is an online, I use it for online homework. Also Google Classroom, so my students were already comfortable with Google Classroom. And then of course, I'm a huge, huge fan of Desmos.com. So the other thing is, since we're coming at this halfway through the year, I didn't really want to change the rhythm of the class. I teach 7th and 8th graders algebra, and by the time my advanced algebra at 8th, we're doing stuff that is really, could easily be 2 or 3 year grade levels, years above their grade level. And so I'm very much into direct instruction and giving them a lot of scaffolding. And so I didn't want to all of a sudden switch to something new. And so what I decided to do is to use Google Docs as my main tool. As you guys can see, as we're going through this, we have, what I'm using is one technique where I actually have 2 Google Docs, one which I share with the students, and the other one which has my information. And then I could like talk and I could just copy and paste it in. As you see, I'm not reading the Google Docs. It's helping me remember it, and I could put the information there. So some of the things that are great about Google Docs, especially for synchronous teaching, one, it's very low bandwidth. That means if your student is on a wonky connection because everybody on his family is having a meeting, the Google Doc will still work, even if they end up stuttering on the video. Google Docs has an equation editor. It has a drawing tool. It has special characters, so you could put division symbols. And one of the key things, it's very easy to add an image to it from either a picture on your phone or by doing a screen grab or a snip from your computer. All right. So how do I use Google Docs? All right. Let's start with the first thing that I do. So for every single, for every single class, what I do is I have an online whiteboard for that day. And that's what I call it. It's our whiteboard. And I date it. And every single one starts with what I call my general expectations. At our school, we actually have shirt and ties. And so I actually made this before we came back, and our school decided to go loosey-goosey and just say a collared shirt instead of a tie. But and so I have your notebooks to take notes, your textbook, your TI-84. On the question about shared screen, what you should do is you should click on the link that I provided, which was a Google Docs shared document, and you should be able to see that document as it's created. Okay? So let me just, all right? And so you then have these general expectations, and then I just put down the date. But what I like about it, it really gets the discipline in the class. So if I call out on somebody and I called them and it said, can you read problem number 8 from your textbook on this page? And they go, I don't have my textbook. I could just go back, oh, wait, but that's, that's number 3. You're supposed to have your textbook. So why are you not prepared? Okay, and then I could just do that to it. Okay, let's see. Underneath the general expectations, I generally have some problems because that's the way I generally teach my classes. I generally have a bunch of problems, and when I was in the classroom, I would often have a smart board, and I'd have the multiple slides, and the slides would have the multiple problems, and then we would just work through them together. So I'm using the same technique just online with my Google Doc. And so again, this, what you see here, I'm actually going to change the color on it, the highlighting orange, to draw your eyes to that. As you can see, using the equation editor, it's not necessarily going to be easy to write down the quadratic formula. So by having it already there, I can just copy and paste it later. I also told people that we were going to be doing word problems. And so my word problems, I have this way of doing it. You have to write down your unknowns, write down the equation, solve it, and then write down your answers. And I have links to 2 documents, hope they're working and everyone has access to them, where they can see my whiteboard at the very beginning and how I set it up. And then by the end of the class, when we have worked through all of our problems. All right, just going to take a quick look at the chat. Oh, all right. So let's see. The next thing that I like to do, I'm just going to close 2 tabs. One of the reasons I don't like sharing the screen is because I have no idea how it looks to the students. So, is it small? Is it large? So this is what I use. Now, one of my most fun features of Google Doc is that with Google Doc, you are able to have multiple students work at the exact same time. So what I often do, if you guys can see, I'm just going to highlight that as a light blue, so you know where you are in the Google Doc. Is an example of 3 problems which I've assigned to students, and often I would do this beforehand, and then each student could work and solve a problem. So if anybody wants to solve and check one of the problems, feel free to grab Sam's and Kevin's and see if you could actually work on it in real time. Put your name on it if you decide to absorb it, if you decide to take care of it. As we go on, let's talk about using Zoom, okay? For me, what I say is I don't actually use Zoom. Zoom is so that I can talk to the students and I can see the students. Now, I'm actually very lucky at being at a private school where I have a small class size, so that I could actually have the Zoom and see the students. So, when they raise their hands, I can actually see them. What I would probably do if I had a larger class is I'd actually use 2 computers. I'd probably have my larger screen with the Zoom so I could see the students, and then just use a Chromebook on the Google Docs. I've considered doing that, but the 15-inch of my laptop has been able to do it just quite well enough. A number of things. I really want to encourage proper classroom behavior, so I don't use Zoom as a jail. I never mute the kids. When they come in, they're unmuted. And as you'll see at the beginning of my doc, I talk about 3 minutes into the class, I want people to mute themselves. That gives me time for, as the kids come in, I can say hi to them, how are you doing? And it just keeps everyone being nice. And it keeps a positive environment. I have students physically raise their hands because one of the advantages of this technique, unlike a classroom when you're writing on the board, you can't see behind you. But what I'm typing into my Google Doc and what I'm seeing on my Zoom, they're in the same direction. So really, it's just my eyes moving this way when I'm typing. I could go there, and if somebody raises their hand, I could usually see that. So that's really, really great. And again, as mentioned about screen sharing, I generally avoid it because I don't know what quality you're going to get from it. Let's see, was there any other points about Zoom? Using Desmos and other tools. I have a little slide on that. I do not think I'm a Desmos expert. I just love it because I think it's works much better than a TI. and it's free if you already have a computer. So one of the things you'll see, I hope you guys can see, using Desmos and other tools. Hold on, let me just back around that to pull people's eye to that. Again, as you see, there's a lot of preparation. There's some preparation. So here, this was a problem that my students were working on for homework, and I found out enough people had trouble on it. And so what I did was I sat down and I mapped out this problem. I took the answer that came from the textbook, and that would have been the yellow graph if you've clicked onto the Desmos link. Sorry, the orange graph. And then my answer, when I saw it by hand, was the blue graph. And by using the colors, as I've been doing with the Google Doc, it allows kids to be able to talk about what we're seeing. So we know what we're seeing, the same thing. And obviously for fast graphs, I'll just pop up Desmos in another window, make it, grab it, and copy and paste it in. Let's see, what else did I have?
And Scott,
yes.
Oh, sorry, I'll need to break in here. We're close to running out of time. So if you could
no
wrap
problem.
up as quickly as possible. Thank you so much.
We are up to the last part.
Excellent.
Very good. Cool. So, so under here, I have a number of important techniques. The highlighting color, you've seen me doing that. Copy and paste when typing into a program. Oh, thank you, I forgot. You should have the Google Doc that you're working with opened on your phone, okay? And you should have it opened up before you even started the class. This way, as you see, it's all filling up. But what's really nice about it, let's say I had to do a problem, 3x plus 7 is equal to 9. With your Google Doc, let me just get to the right place. Boom. Hit edit. And this seems slow, but it's actually much faster than if you didn't have your document already ready to go. Then I go boom. Did I get a good picture there? I hope I did. No, I did not get a good picture. We'll do it again. Just a little bit rushing. It's just that it's a really nice, simple technique because Google Doc allows you to take pictures directly from the camera. There we go. And so you should be able to see the images came up. Delete the first one. This one doesn't have a right rotation, but you can basically, again, you're going to work with your documents and image options. One of them is size and rotation. You go boom, and you should now have it, okay? Now, one of the things that's actually happening is I'm actually in my bedroom because my daughter is doing gymnastics in the living room. And so what you basically see is a problem of not having good enough lighting for this image. But that's something that you obviously practice before to make sure that it works out well. Let's see, were there any other notes? Lessons learned. Oh, walk around and get yourself loose before you have to sit down. I found that's the very worst part of teaching online is having to sit down for 40 minutes or 45 minutes. So that's what I'm going to have. Everything I wanted to say, it's in the Google Doc. I am ready now for questions.
Excellent. And I'm so very sorry that I think we'll have to come back to questions after small groups. So thank you very much. And I hope your small groups, we had several people depart right before the small group. So your small groups may have been differently sized than we intended them to be. But I wonder if anyone would like to share something of importance that came up in your small groups that you think the whole group would benefit from, or pose a question that we didn't have a chance to get to.
I have a question.
Yeah, is that you, Claire?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Does anyone have a good way to annotate student work that's pictures? So when students submit their work to me on Google Classroom, they often upload a picture, and I haven't found a good way to annotate the work, like give feedback on the work itself.
We were just talking about that in our breakout room. Actually, if you do a Google form and you require them to submit like a picture of their work as one of these submissions on the Google form, and it's required, then you can type response. You can respond to everybody's individually.
Okay.
So it's, yeah, Google Forms has that nice feature that you can respond to everyone individually.
Thank you.
Yeah, another thing that I've been playing with is all the Google Chrome extensions. There's like ones where you can turn like pictures into PDFs, and there's like annotation tools. I found this new one called Pear Deck where you can like put all different questions in your slides. There's so many that I've literally been playing with, just trying to get everything together. There's a math equation one just found, game changer. So there's like a ton of those that I'm sure if like you like search it up, there has to be something on there if you're using Google Chrome at least.
Thank you.
Great.
And I would just add,
So-
generally, it's much easier to annotate PDFs. So I always have my students, if I can, have them submit work as a PDF instead of a JPEG. Otherwise, I end up converting it myself. But like there are tons of apps, just general like things built into the computer anyway that you can annotate on a PDF. So sometimes I try and remind them to submit in that format in the first place.
Yeah,
So
the other thing that I've done is if they submit it as an image, you can like if you open that image in a new window, you can like draw little boxes around parts of it and comment. But then the only way the students can see those comments is if they also open it in a new window. And so I've had a really hard time getting kids to actually do that. So I think like a lower tech option is just like having them put the image in a Google Doc and then you can type in the Google Doc.
Got it.
So
thank you guys so much.
Several of you have probably seen that Sharona mentioned that she uses Go Formative for writing directly on student work, and others use Notability. And I'd like to mention that it is 5 o'clock and some of you may need to go. And if so, I want to thank you very much for being here.